The hospital room was silent, save for the rhythmic, hollow hum of the monitors. Elias sat in the hard plastic chair, his shadow stretching long and jagged across the linoleum floor. In the bed, Clara lay still, her breathing shallow and rhythmic. This was her 6th stay in this ward, and the air felt heavy with the familiar scent of antiseptic and unsaid things. Elias watched her, but his mind was miles away, wandering through the dusty corridors of his own expectations. He pulled a crumpled photograph from his wallet. In it, 6 girls smiled back at him, a staircase of ribbons, braids, and bright, high-pitched laughter. They were his blood, his pride in the eyes of the neighbors, yet in the quiet of this room, they felt like a series of closed doors. He looked at Clara, his jaw tightening. He had wanted a son to carry the weight of his father's name, to walk the path he had cleared. Instead, he felt the line ending with him, drifting away into a sea of floral dresses and soft voices. 6 times, Clara, Elias whispered, his voice barely a tremor in the sterile air. 6 times we tried to build a pillar, and 6 times we built a garden. He looked at her sleeping face, feeling a surge of bitterness that tasted like copper. He felt cheated by a silent pact he thought they'd made. To him, the name was a torch that needed a hand to hold it, and he saw only empty air where that hand should have been. He stood up, the chair scraping harshly against the floor, a sound of finality. The night air was sharp and bit at his lungs as he stepped out of the hospital. The city lights were blurred by a low-hanging mist, turning the world into a smudge of neon and gray. Elias didn't want to go home to the empty house filled with the toys and shoes of 6 daughters. He needed a place where the air was thick with smoke and the voices were lower, deeper, a place where he could bury the resentment that was clawing at his throat. The Rusty Anchor was a basement bar that smelled of stale hops and old secrets. Elias pushed through the heavy wooden door, the bell above it chiming a lonely note. He saw his friends sitting in their usual booth at the back, the glow of a low-hanging lamp reflecting off their half-empty glasses. Here, he wasn't a father or a husband. He was just a man with a heavy heart and a story that needed a witness. Julian looked up as Elias slid into the booth. He pushed a glass toward him, without a word. Julian had known Elias since they were boys, and he could read the storm on his friend's face like a familiar book. "Clara okay?" Julian asked, his voice a low rumble. Elias took a long pull of his drink, the amber liquid burning its way down. "She's resting," Elias replied, "but I'm the one who can't seem to find any peace." Braun joined them a moment later, sliding in next to Julian with a heavy sigh. He dropped his keys on the table, the metallic clatter echoing Elias's internal frustration. Bram was a man of few words, but he understood the burden of legacy. He watched the way Elias gripped his glass, the knuckles white and strained. "It's the girls again, isn't it?" Bram muttered, swirling the ice in his own drink. "It's not just the girls, Bram," Elias snapped, his voice rising just enough to turn a few heads at the bar. "It's the end of everything. My father, his father, we built things. We had a name that meant something. Now, I'm just a ghost waiting to happen. 6 of them, and not one to carry the torch. Clara, she just doesn't see it. She thinks a smile is enough to keep a house standing." He slammed his hand on the table, the frustration finally boiling over. Julian reached out and put a hand on Elias's arm, pulling him back down into the shadows of the booth. "You're looking at a mirror and seeing a wall, Elias," Julian said softly. "You think a name is a building, but it's a story. You've got 6 stories being written right in front of you, and you're too busy looking for a title to read the pages." Elias looked away, the anger ebbing into a hollow, aching silence. He didn't want a story. He wanted a monument. The walk back was longer than the walk there. The alcohol had dulled the edges of his anger, leaving only a cold, heavy stone in his chest. As he passed under the flickering yellow light of a street lamp, Elias stopped. He thought of his daughters' faces and then of Clara's pale, sleeping form. The world didn't feel any lighter, and the name still felt like a weight he was carrying alone. He turned the corner toward the hospital, a solitary figure moving through a city that didn't care about the names of men.